So if you want to improve at guitar, you need to practice. Duh. We all know that part, right? But what exactly should you practice is the real question here, and I think I got you. Today I want to show you 6 essential picking hand exercises that you should be doing every single day to improve at classical guitar or fingerstyle. And obviously you can just pick 1 or 2 of them, but the 6 exercises all together will give you a well-rounded right hand training, so I highly recommend to try them all. My idea with these exercises is that we need to train our right hand evenly, so all the muscles, in order to be able to control our movements smoothly and pick evenly. The first thing we're going to do is a simple string changing exercise using open strings, so it's going to be very accessible for beginners, but it's going to be interesting for more advanced players and revealing as well. So first I'm going to play it as it is, as I would normally play the exercise, and then I'm going to slow it down and will give you further explanations on what's actually going on. Okay, sounds good? All right, let's do it. To get the most out of this exercise, you need to do it with each finger combinations. So with IM, MA, and then IA as well. And I love this exercise so much because it teaches you the exact place of each of the strings and the distance. You will get a strong sense and feel of where the strings are. Therefore, it really improves your right hand accuracy. What's really important about this exercise is that you don't want to do any kind of like bracing on the soundboard or plant your fingers, unused fingers on the strings. What you really want to have here is to find a good relaxed right hand position. So for me, this is my normal right hand picking hand shape, posture, if you want to call it that, and I was moving this same hand shape across the strings throughout the whole exercise. As I was going up on the strings, I didn't extend my hand and then bring the fingers back to my palm, but I was moving the whole hand across the strings like this. Before we move on, I wanted to say that if you want to improve your technique, tone, and musicality, training might not be enough, and maybe it's time for you to upgrade your instrument. So I'd like you to check out today's sponsor, the Guitar Collection, which is essentially an online store for high-end and rare classical guitars. Now, Evan Tocher, the founder of the Guitar Collection, is a professional guitarist, classical guitarist himself, and also a good friend of mine. We even recorded a podcast some time ago. So he makes these review videos and live streams of every single guitar they list, which you can watch on their YouTube channel. I think these reviews and live streams are fantastic for not only getting an idea of how these guitars sound, you know, as someone who might be interested in buying them, but also for learning about unique instruments and understanding what to look for when you're buying a new guitar. But if you're still unsure about what you need, what exactly you want, you can simply just contact Evan, schedule a meeting with him, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna do his best to help you find the guitar that suits best your needs. And I love that they have lots of guitars in many different price ranges too. But every single guitar is handmade, so I can sincerely recommend guitarcollection.com and getting in touch with Evan. So yeah, go ahead and get your dream guitar today, and a huge thank you for guitarcollection.com for sponsoring this video. The next thing is going to be a funny one, and I think most people don't even practice this anymore. At least most people don't practice this thing after they pass the beginner phase. But I believe the biggest difference between hobby players and professionals or like legendary players is that legends aren't afraid to go back to basics and aren't afraid to work on the basic elements and techniques daily if that's what they need. Amateurs often think that once you pass a level, you don't need to go back to work on simple things, but that's just really not true. There are things you need to revisit over and over as the years pass, no matter how skilled you are. And I think this next exercise is exactly one of those things. When people are switching from single notes to chords or double stops, they stop a string, they mute strings, and therefore they like break the melody and their playing becomes chunky. And that's not very nice, it's not very pleasant to listen to. Anyway, so here goes the exercise, and then I'm gonna explain what I was doing. One more time slower. So essentially we have single notes picked with, any of the fingers, and then followed by a chord which is going to use all the fingers, all the remaining fingers. So if I played the single note with an I finger, I'm going to use P, M, A for the chord. What's extremely important is that the movements start from the bass knuckles, from the big knuckles, and the fingers are going towards the palm. So they are not going outwards, away from the guitar, but the fingers are going in the palm like this. So you don't have to actually touch your palm. This is a common mistake. People misunderstand this all the time. I'm speaking of the direction of the movement. I think this exercise is good as it is, but if we add a little twist, a little variation, it's going to add a whole new layer to this. We're going to play the same exercise, but when we pick the chords, we're going to use all the fingers, even the ones that we used for the single notes. When you play this exercise, you don't want to touch the strings too early. You want to play legato, so connecting the notes in a smooth way without gaps in between them. And that's essentially why we're doing this whole exercise, to be able to switch between single notes and chords smoothly. So you want to prepare the fingers above the strings a little bit and then attack the strings from the air. Now I'm showing you everything today on open strings, and to be honest, I like to play right-hand exercises with open strings because the second I add some chords and left-hand shapes, it divides my attention, and I like to work on problems and techniques and in separation. However, if these exercises are not very stimulating for you because they sound boring, I get that. But the good part is that you can add all sorts of chords and shapes to it with the left hand too. I don't know, you can come up with something like maybe those are not the best chords as an example to make the exercise more stimulating and interesting, but you get my point, right? Okay, here's what we're gonna do next. arpeggios, because everybody needs arpeggios to get an even, strong right hand or picking hand. I'm sorry, I always say right hand and lefties get so mad about it, so I'm calling it picking hand now. When I work on arpeggios, I like to choose a simple shape that's gonna transfer across the neck so I can move it up and down as I want to, however long I want to work on my arpeggios, and then I can choose any kind of right hand picking shape that works with that. Okay, so here's the core exercise and then we're gonna break it down. So the pattern I was playing starts from the thumb, index, middle, ring, and then back, and then one string up with the thumb, repeating the same, another string up, back to A, and then when I arrive back to the E string, that's when I switch one position up with the chord. So then when I start the new loop or the new sequence, I'm one position up. I'm arriving to the new chord already. Another common shape you could try is to pick the outer strings together and go from there to the inside and then back, like this. A very common variation of this one is to reverse the order of the G and B string, so it becomes... There are literally endless ways to do this exercise, and it's really up to you to find and to come up with variations and alterations. What's truly important is to change your patterns regularly, to try new ones every now and then, because eventually your hand will get used to the old shapes you've been practicing for a long time, and you just need to switch them up sometimes to really train your right hand. All right, and now we arrived to everybody's biggest nightmare, the apoyando technique. If you're a casual fingerstyle player, you probably don't use this technique much, but the more you lean into classical music and classical repertoire, the more you're gonna need to use it here and there, at least on the ring finger, but we're not gonna stop there. Let me set you up for this under 30 seconds. I hope I can do that. So essentially, free picking or tirando picking is the normal way of picking guitar. So basically you touch the string, you pluck it, and you leave it like this. And in comparison, when you're using apoyando picking, or also called as rest strokes, you essentially kind of like target the string under the string you're picking. So when you're picking the G string, your finger is gonna stop at the D string, so it like arrives there and stops there. This usually helps with volume, or it creates a different tone. It's more crispy. A lot of people like to use this technique to highlight certain voices, so like to bring the melody of a piece out. We're gonna do a simple C major scale in the 5th position. And then once we arrive here, instead of closing it back to C, we just go 1 fret up and we'll keep going. This is a great exercise because you can play around with the speed, so you can play it a lot slower and a lot faster, and you can change the fingerings of it. So instead of just playing with I, M finger, you can try it with M, A finger or I, A finger and see how that goes. And let me prepare you, it's not gonna go well. At least not first. What I absolutely recommend you to try is a dotted note practice with this one. So long, or then short, I also recommend you to try this with note repetition. So repeat the notes in even and odd numbers both, because depending on if you're playing even numbers or odd numbers, you're gonna arrive to string changing and string crossing with different fingers, so it's gonna train your hand more evenly. And this is where the first exercise will come in handy if you practice that also. And the final thing I recommend you to do with this exercise is going to be speed burst, because that's how you're going to develop fast appuyendo scales. So let's say you want to play 4, 5, 6 notes together. It doesn't really matter how many. What matters is you just need to pick a group of notes, and you need to give it all you have. You need to play it really, really fast, or as fast as you can, and then you need to relax your hand completely before you play the next group of notes, and you relax again, and then you play the next group of notes and you relax again. And over time you're going to be able to play more and more notes with less and less relaxation in between. The next thing I think everybody should practice in order to get a well-balanced, strong right hand technique, picking hand technique I mean, is a tremolo exercise, or some sort of tremolo exercises. So tremolo is a technique where you essentially pick the same string rapidly with the fingers in order to create the effect of a sustained note, of a long note. So it's kind of like this. And I love recommending tremolo as an exercise for people who are really far from playing actual tremolo pieces too, because this movement, like this fluid movement, requires you to fine-tune your muscles so much, and it's really, really useful for your technique. That's essentially the movement we're going to do. So we pick 4 longer notes, and then a couple of rapid tremolo rounds. And then we go back to the long notes, and while we're playing the long notes, it allows us to relax our hand, reset our position or technique if needed, and to get prepared for the next round of tremolo or next round of fast notes. And over time you can extend the length of the tremolo part or reduce the amount of long notes you add. It really depends on you, but yeah, the stronger you will get, or the more you will get comfortable with this technique, the less relaxation notes you will need. But it's really, really helpful to start with them. I intentionally showed it to you on the first string because that's the easiest, but the more you go, you know, on the inner strings, it becomes easier and easier to touch, you know, some other strings unintentionally. The best way to do this is by working on all the strings. So for example, something like this. But But if you want to set yourself up for playing tremolo pieces in the future, you also want to separate the strings you're playing the tremolo thing on and the thumb, because that's how tremolo appears in actual pieces mostly. So you also want to add a little alteration to this, like... And if this is going really, really well, you can just simply remove the long notes and create an even tremolo exercise. And the final exercise I think you should be doing is maybe the most important of all of these things, and it's going to be some sort of rasgueado exercise. But let me explain why. You can switch it with something else as long as it serves the same purpose. So here's the thing: if we want to train the right hand evenly, the picking hand evenly, oh my God! If we want to play the picking hand evenly, it's not enough to use just these fingers, because as long as we're not involving the pinky in any of the processes, we're just simply not training this part of the hand. And we have a couple of muscles there too as well, because every single finger has, I think, at least 2 muscles attached to it, but there are muscles on both sides of the fingers, and depending on what you do, if you extend or like pull the fingers in, you're going to use different fingers. But the thing is, these little muscles are going to be responsible for the fine movements of your hand, and if you never train these muscles, you're not going to be able to create that smooth, even movement. And I think most people have different solutions for this problem. I know some people involve the pinky in tremolo exercises, and I used to do that, and let me tell you, I suck at that. But I know that the flamenco tremolo technique also involves the pinky, and there are lots of techniques that involves the pinky. But the way I find that it works best for me is to try some rasgueado exercises where I can involve the pinky, and by that I can strengthen this part of my hand. I'm going to show it first, and then we're going to talk about this. So what's going on here? I flick with each of the fingers as strongly as I can. Just really, I'm using all my power, all the power I have in that finger. I have a very simple right hand shape, as you can see, and I try not to move the base knuckles. I try not to move this part of my hand. I'm just gonna flick the strings one by one, and after each flick, I'm gonna relax that muscle, or I'm gonna relax that finger as much as I can. So flick, relax, flick, relax, and then thumb and back. And throughout the whole exercise, I'm planting my thumb on the 6th string, except for when I go down and then I come back. I prepared the fingers close to my palm. I also prefer to mute the strings because this exercise sounds really annoying, but you can just put on some fun chords and enjoy that. And then I also like to increase the speed gradually, just little by little, because that's how I feel like I'm stretching my strength and my limits. So I just start reducing the time I use for relaxation, and eventually I only relax after the thumb thing, so between sequences. Once again, this is just one example, and you can use any kind of rasgueado technique or rasgueado pattern as long as it involves all the fingers. You probably noticed that I promised you 6 exercises, and I actually showed you 6 exercises and 20 alterations, or I don't know, I just showed you lots of alterations. And I think that's the beauty of these exercises, because the more simple the core exercise is, the more variations you can create from it depending on what you actually need. And this is not something you can do with etudes or complex exercises that involves left hand changes and chords and shapes. Now, some of the exercises I showed you today are from my 11 exercises booklet, more specifically the string changing, the tremolo, and the rasgado exercises. And you can find sheet music plus tabs plus description for each of the exercises in this one. But I based this exercise booklet on a very successful YouTube video I published some time ago. So you can find all the exercises included in this booklet on my YouTube channel for absolutely free. But if you're looking for some cool new exercises to try and work on, some simple exercises that are very accessible for beginners, but also stimulating for more advanced players as well, I'm going to leave a link to this booklet down below in the description. You can find it on Amazon. But if you want to have sheet music plus tabs for these exercises, the ones that I showed you today, with some suggested variations and alterations, I'm going to upload that on my Patreon page. Now, I really hope you liked these exercises, and if you did, be sure to let me know in the comments. And I'd also love to hear what technical challenges you have and what you'd like to see more videos on in the future. Because, you know, I've been making educational videos on YouTube for years now. I think it's been 4 years. And probably the greatest source of inspiration and feedback is you and your comments. And if you would like to see more videos from me in the future, please consider supporting my work on Patreon, because that's essentially how I fund this channel. So yeah, I would greatly appreciate your support. All right, that's about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.